Hi everyone, welcome to another video of sympathetic listening. Today I am here with Paul and Dave, and we have a bit of a special video today. We're going to have an international conversation about helping, what helping is, what helping looks like in different parts of the world, and talk about what we think helping is, and maybe also what helping isn't. So, welcome to Paul and Dave. Um,
Hi.
Hi.
All right.
Paul, maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us what kind of work you do. And yes.
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for this opportunity. As Yo said, my name is Paul. I'm speaking to you from the East Coast of the United States, North America. And I can speak for myself and in some ways maybe can speak on the culture of the United States a little bit, at least as I see it.
Yeah. Yes.
My background is as a writer. In terms of what might be relevant in terms of helping, the theme of this discussion, I have done some volunteer work in the hospice field.
Yeah.
So folks who are in the process of dying, I've done a little bit of work with them. I also follow a vegan lifestyle. So I do try to work for animals and help them out, and also help out human beings who are transitioning to veganism as a lifestyle. And then finally, I do, as a personal practice, and share it with folks, I do meditate. So I find that can be very helpful for myself, and whenever possible, I share that with others. So that's me.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being here and being part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Yes. So Dave is from India, and he also does some very special things in regards to helping others, I think. And Dave, can you maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dev Barot, and I'm from Mumbai, India. Mumbai is a major metropolis on the west coast of India, and it has about 20 million people. It's one of the largest cities in the world.
Wow, yes.
And for the better part of 18 years, I've been involved in some form of social work. And earlier, I used to volunteer for many. We have these. There are certain socio-economic phenomena which are there in third world countries, which may not be relevant to the Western world.
Yes.
We have a huge cataract epidemic. The cataract epidemic. There are millions of blind people who don't know that they can be rehabilitated by a simple surgery. So
Wow.
I have given my voluntary service in about 13 of these small camps, and overall about 2,000 patients.
Wow.
We got from the poorest of the poor communities, and
Yes.
they had the criterion were they were old and primarily aboriginal. There is a word for the indigenous people they're like the forest people. They're called
Yes.
Adivasis. Something similar to how you have Indians in the United States, not
Yeah.
Asian Indians.
Native
I'm
Americans.
sorry if I'm American. I was going to say Red Indians, but no, they say American Indians,
Native
and
Americans.
the Aboriginals, how they are in South America,
Yes.
Australia.
Yes.
So we have certain indigenous communities which are rich with a with a culture which is very steeped in nature worship, and a very
Wow.
very intelligent
Wow.
kind of. They have their own ways of water divining and worship of the natural elements, and many sub layers within them.
Yes.
So after that initial experience of about 3 years in volunteering, two friends and I, we set up a trust and for the underprivileged communities, and now we have an ongoing supplementary education program
Yes.
in more than 150 schools. And it's I mean, I'll talk to in very brief about this, because
Yes.
I don't want to take up too much time on this thing, uh, this project part. And this project is very special because it's all about intervention and capacity building of uh, rural infrastructure, which consists of schools, their
Yes.
teachers, and the skills that are to be imparted to those teachers. Of
Yes.
course, we'll talk in greater detail on another day.
Well,
And
I would love to actually hear more about that. Like what services
yes,
the places that
yes.
you
So
work at
what services?
provide. Yeah.
Yes, so we provide infrastructure services wherein we have these very basic pre-primary schools, wherein I would like to very happily and proudly share that we have a mandate for the repair and renovation of about 200 such pre-primary schools,
Okay.
like
Wow.
kindergarten schools, and we will completely refurbish them. We will put a
Wow.
fresh coat of paint. We will have plumbing and plastering done. We'll put bright colors. I think Julian, I've shared some pictures with you. This color, have I?
I'm not sure. I have seen the website of your
Yeah, no, the website
organization.
doesn't have this program. The website is very
Okay.
outdated. It
Okay.
is it's like it's like from the dinosaur era. We don't do any of that anymore. So I
Okay.
don't give anybody the website link. I'll send you some other links
Okay.
anyway.
Yes, you can show me
So,
some other stuff.
yeah. So in short, we are covering we are touching the lives of nearly 15,000 children as of
Wow.
the year 2018-19. We will be.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
on my personal level, for the last 21 years, I've been into what we may broadly describe as various mindfulness
Yes.
and practices which are steeped, I mean, which revolve around awareness, and have been greatly influenced by gurus such as Gurudev Nityananda of Ganeshpuri and Sri Ramana Maharshi of South India, and many. I'm grateful to many Western teachers like Eckhart Tolle, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Gary Douglas, who's of the United States, and
Nice. A little link there.
that's it. So, and I think there is no greater uh, thing than awareness, and
Yes.
there is nothing is going to save the planet more than awareness
Yeah.
can. Not awareness of this or that. Just uh, like Eckhart would say, an evolutionary impulse has to grip all of us, and each of us has to awaken. If this planet has to survive in,
Yeah.
because the planet does not mind, it will just raise its temperature
Yes.
and remove the pests, meaning us.
Yes.
It will just get
We're
rid of
going
us.
big already with our ideas on, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you. Um, I realized I didn't fully
Thank you so
uh,
much. I think I've
thank you
spoken
so
so
much for
much.
being here.
No, that's good.
No,
Thank you.
it
That was
was great. Yes. Um, I didn't realize I didn't fully introduce myself for anyone who
Yes,
doesn't
please.
know me, who hasn't
please
watched the
do.
channel yet. I've been making YouTube videos for about 3 years now, I think, all about communication and deep listening. I've been an assistant of a communication trainer. I've done different things. I've given listening sessions online for people who are going through a difficult time. And I decided last year that I really wanted to connect that also with an education. So I started studying social work, and right now I volunteer twice a week at a facility for homeless people. So these are,
Fantastic.
yes, thank you. These are people.
Fantastic. Very amazing. I never knew any. I just knew sympathetic listening, that aspect
A
of it, you know.
little, yes.
Yes.
So the organization that I work for, or that I volunteer for, um, they provide the most basic care for people who basically live in the streets. Some guests also have found a bed somewhere in some homeless shelter, but there is definitely a group of people who really lives in the street, and so they can come and have a meal, some coffee, some tea. They can wash their clothing there. We have some free clothes as well, secondhand clothes that they can just get if they are really in need. They can shower there. So it's really the basics. And of course, the most important thing, or I say of course, but I don't know if everyone would look at it like that, but it's just to be there for them and to listen to their story and to just play a game or have a nice talk or really have a deep conversation about something. And if they're ready to make a step towards maybe getting off the streets, then of course there are professionals working there who can help them and connect them to the right organization so that can happen. But they can just be there. There are no um, there are no requirements made of them. All you need to do to come is to keep us safe and to keep everyone there safe. And if that's it, doesn't matter if you have troubles with the police. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your situation is. We don't mind. You're welcome. So that's really the intention of that place of work, which I just love so much. And it just immediately touched me when I discovered it, and I knew that I wanted to go there and be part of that. But that's what I'm doing and what I am up to.
Fabulous.
Thank you. I am in the Netherlands. So yes, Europe here. Hi. And yes. So I think I shared a little bit about what the organization does that I volunteer for. And I think, Dave, you gave such a lovely explanation of all that you do and your organization does in rural areas. But Paul, what does your organization do, the hospice where you work at? What is their intention? What is the service that they provide?
Right. Well, I volunteer at what is called the hospice house of my town. I live in a fairly small town or a small city. It is a tourist town. We do have families. We have a college, but we also have a large aging population. So about 20 years ago, a group of people came together to create a hospice organization in which the volunteers would be providing comfort, support, a nice, relaxing death experience, if I could say. Not particularly any medical help, but there might have been a partnership with the medical community for pain relief.
Okay.
Then about 20 years ago, we were fortunate enough. This is all this particular organization has been all community funded. There's no local government, state government, or the federal government giving any money. We were able to build a small house. So it's a house that has 4 very nice rooms for people who are dying, and it has a kitchen and a dining room and a living room for families and friends. And it has some staff area because offices, so people can come into the house and spend their final days there. Or we also have volunteers that go out into the community and meet with people who are in the, let's say, last 6 months of their life. And we also help. It's very hard to be a caregiver of someone who
It's beautiful, beautiful.
lost a lot of function. And so we provide support not just for the person who is dying, that be it emotional support or just being, as you said, being there for somebody, but also being there for friends and family and for the main caregiver to provide them a little bit of relief from the great responsibility of being there with their loved one who is dying. So that's what the hospice house does in my town, and it's well respected, and it does a really good job.
Wow. Yes.
Fantastic, Paul. I might like to add that this word I've not heard for a long time, but I think this whole modality is called palliative care, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. Yes.
It's called palliative care.
Yes.
I had not heard this word in a long time because I had been to a hospice, a palliative care unit, which was run by Christian nuns with some distance away from my house.
Okay.
Some Christian organizations are doing very good work, in this field.
Yes.
And I might like to add to one thing that Paul, I dare say I'm giving a suggestion. But this is what I heard and I read in my studies, that the Buddhists, I don't know in great detail, but the Buddhists have a practice, or Eckhart Tolle, I quote, has quoted this somewhere, that to be present with a dying person is one of the most spiritual gifts you can give to that person. Without getting involved, without saying, poor you, I'm there for you. I'm sure Paul doesn't do any of that. And Paul does exactly what I'm telling you. And that is a very redeeming kind of practice for both the dying person and for the person who is present with the dying person.
Yes.
And it eases the passage of the dying person. So this is a small suggestion. This is something which I have not done this, but I'm sure you do this.
Well, I think that's actually very interesting because, like, Paul, how do you see that? Like, how can you be present in a way that's helpful to the person who is passing on, instead of, like, for instance, what Dave says, where you're just like pitying them, or that doesn't seem like a nice way to go. If I may put it that way.
This is such a rich topic, so feel free, if I start going on too long, just hold up a hand and whatever. First of all, in the United States, we have, I am making it broad. We are afraid, speaking very generally, we're afraid of death. We have a youth culture. We have a consumerist culture. We have a buy this to be happy. What's the next thing?
We are getting there. We are not far behind. India is getting there. I promise you. We are getting there. We are not behind in any way. We are becoming that. We are aspired to become everything that you are.
Right.
Not in a nice way. I'm just joking. Unfortunately.
I got you. No, I understand.
Yolan is not. It's a joke, Yolan.
I had some deaths in the family, so I went through a grief process and realized that, death happens to all families, and it happens in my family. Eventually, I was ready to be a part of our local hospice group, what I just mentioned, and they do provide training, and there might be a certain form of self-selection. So the people who choose to do this sort of work feel somewhat comfortable with doing it.
Yes.
But to kind of already echo what we've mentioned a couple times, just being with the dying person or their family or friends and listening to the family is so much for them. So in terms of talking to the family, imagine that they've got so much bottled up, so much emotions, they're going this way and that way, they're losing their loved one, and just having me or someone sit and relax and listen to them. Anything they want to say can be very helpful. I will say that when I've sat with, I keep referring to the person as the dying person. I hope that's just a very straightforward way of saying it.
Yes.
We're all dying, of course, right?
Yes.
But
We are all
sitting
in a
with
state of decay. Yes.
yeah, in my experience, sitting with the dying person, I have had the experience where that person is in a very comfortable bed and they are non-responsive. So communicating in terms of having a conversation doesn't happen. What I am there is just to be present
To be present.
and
Yes.
just to be there in their final days. And I will say, for the family members, that is extremely comforting because the family needs rest and they
Yes.
need to go out and get lunch and they need to do their tasks. But the thought of leaving their loved one alone, they don't want to do that and have the family member feel like they're alone in the final days or hours or minutes of their death. So we're just there. We're just a
Wow.
human presence. So
We're
that's
facilitating.
exactly. And let me please say that I get out of this helping, I get way much more. And I get so much benefit out of seeing this and feel very honored to be a part of this experience with the dying person and their family.
How has your view on death changed since you started doing this work? Because you say that our culture is very much centered around being young. And I think it is the same over here. But you're confronted with this very regularly. What does that do for you?
That's a wonderful question, and I don't wish to dominate the conversation, but I would say it's a process, and I read a lot of books, but you also have to experience everything within your own awareness to take
Yes.
that. You can intellectually know something, but you have to
Yeah.
experience. So
Yeah.
it was. I would say it's just a gradual process. Put it like this, to put it in terms of very practical terms. Okay, my mother died. She was fortunate enough to die at home, and we had hospice folks come and spend time with her. So I saw what those people could do. Then I knew I wanted to be involved, but I knew I was in a grief process for, let's say, 2 or 3 years. So then the next little baby step is, oh, I remember the hospice house in town. I'm going to find out about it. Then I'm going to sign up for their volunteer workshop. Then I'm going to say I'm going to be a volunteer. So little by little, I sort of stepped into learning more about the organization. And with each step, I learned a little bit more about death and how I think about death, how my fellow town members think about death, and how the dying folks think about death.
Yeah. I think, wow, yes, beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I would actually expect, Dave, that in India, people would be more in tune with dying.
Yes, India is more in tune with dying. We are very philosophical. Death is open all around the place. I mean, it's just like because even the Hindu funeral ceremony, it's like open. It is not
Yes,
like
yes.
it's not like in a cask or in a. I mean, the body is just lying there, and then they do some kind of ceremony. They take out a procession, and then they cremate it.
Yes.
Of course, the body is hidden under the whole, you know, it's covered with the logs. You know, it's positioned in such a way
Yes.
that it's not visible.
Yes.
Thankfully for that. And now people are using electric crematoriums. So where the body is just put into a giant oven.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to
Okay.
trivialize the whole thing,
Yes.
but it's like a giant oven where instead of cooking the body, the temperature is so high that within 20 minutes the body is reduced to
Yes.
ash.
Do you think that does something to the mentality of the culture that all
Yes,
of a
yes.
sudden is becoming separate?
And I'll tell you because 80% of India's population is Hindu, and we have something called Asti Visarjan. Where I have personally, I mean, I was horrified. I said, how could I do this? So for my dead parents, I in a small urn, the astis, the remnants that they would hand pick, like you know how they would pick from a shop, you know, the
Yeah.
people in the crematorium, you know, the like you gave him a tip. I mean, even if you didn't, he would do it in anyways, and he would put it in a small urn and tie it with a cloth, and he would hand it over to you. So that those remnants, those bone pieces, would have to be they would have to be prayed upon, and I would have to physically immerse them in a holy river or something, and that would be that small ceremony puts you really close with the death aspect, and there are elaborate 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th day ceremonies wherein the priest sits and makes us understand the whole life cycle and how the life and death is. Like basically all spiritual exposure is given to the relatives of the kin. I mean, I particularly enjoyed this for my father's ceremony because I was in a much better mental state. With my mother, I was still grieving and mourning, and so I could not relish the opportunity for that particular ceremony. And so this exposes the entire family to this kind of ceremony. So
Wow.
death is actually very visible in India, and of
Yes.
course we too have a very very frightening, alarming uh, rate. Statistics of a aging population, if I may use this word. There are about the entire population of the United States, probably 300 million. We have senior citizens.
Wow. We have a similar
This is
problem here.
yes,
Yes. Healthcare is becoming unaffordable here.
yes, and we
Everything,
don't have any national security in India.
wow.
And
Oh,
though, of course, the government has just introduced a blanket security for the poorest of the poor, because we
wow.
have uh, and in Himachal Pradesh, which is one of my favorite states, I keep posting of pictures of European type mountains,
Yeah,
hills. It's a
beautiful.
temperate.
Like up
They
north,
have a
right?
yeah, up
Yes.
north, next to
Yes.
the China border.
Yes.
Uh, uh, in in uh, in that particular state, you will be very happy to know, both of you will be happy to know that there's actually a legislation which protects aging parents. You are not allowed to abandon your parents
Oh,
in that state.
interesting. That's a way to solve it, right?
Yes, yes. I'll send Yuline uh, some kind of a link, and she can share with Paul, or
Thank
maybe Paul can
you.
have here. So
Great.
I would love to.
it's
Yes.
heartening. Yes, it's heartening to know, because we actually culturally we are very it's a nice support system, but of course nowadays people are modern, and it's taboo that people should put their parents in old age homes, but it's
It's taboo.
unfortunately it's taboo. Oh, he's like,
Oh,
people even
wow.
in my peer group. I have my closest friends, and many of my friends. I don't know anybody in my peer group who has put his
Yes.
parents in a old age home. They keep them at home, and they look
Wow.
after them. If they can't look after them, they hire nurses and ward boys, and they set up hospitals in palliative care or something like that in the house. But no way. I mean, old age home is like you like fucked up big time. It's worse than it's more stigmatic than. I mean, it's just as bad as anything else. It's like you're so ungrateful you
Wow.
did that. My God, did you do that? I mean, I don't believe he did that. People who are
Yes.
modern like me, modern English speaking, and we would not approve of this. Though, uh, fortunately or unfortunately, my parents, both of them, passed away when I was in my 20s in quick
Okay.
succession.
Yes.
So in my thing, I said that I was stronger, younger when I had to look after them, and I did a good job. And I'm free from those responsibilities. Otherwise, it would be a very painful choice.
Yes. Did you look after them yourself?
Uh, mm, no, not myself. My sisters did, but I looked
Ah,
after the financials, and
okay.
unfortunately, we have a private policy. We call it a Mediclaim policy, and unfortunately, of course, I have some very modest kind of Mediclaim, because in case there is some hospitalization, these guys, they're just the private hospitals rip you off.
Hmm.
So we did have during my mother's time. So I paid a lot of money. I took loans and stuff, which I repaid later. And despite that, I couldn't save her. So that I did my part.
Yes,
And
of course. Yeah, I think it can work like that, right? As a family, you can all take on different tasks and
yes,
care
we did.
together for a parent or a loved one. Oh,
And like
wow.
Paul says, but it's there's no, it's just that support is so invaluable, the kind of support which Paul gives, because when a parent
Yes.
is in that when the family members are in that state of distress, I mean, there are so many stressors at that point in time, because there is financial stress, there is emotional stress, there is
Yes.
chemical stress because you eat the wrong foods that time.
Yes.
Your food
Yes.
cycles go for a toss. It's
Yeah,
like every day is
sure.
jet lag. Because when my mother
Yes.
was in hospital, it was like we would have to do the night shift because anything could, anytime could happen when we would be called to just say, okay, now
So,
deal with.
what do you think of, because something which is happening very much in my country is that caring for other people is becoming a job, right? It's something that
Exactly.
you are educated for and that you get money for in return. But
But who pays for it, Julian, if I may ask? What is the economics of it? The government pays for all these things?
well, I think, well, it used to be like that, right? But we also have this challenge where a lot of the population is becoming older, and we have less people who are working who can actually financially take care of it all. And so we're taking a step backwards, where before it was very easy to get certain types of care. It's now becoming much more difficult. And first, they are making an appeal to the families to take care of people, especially the elderly, but also people who are handicapped in some way, or um, a lot is being asked from the families, and it's becoming more and more. But it's kind of this strange issue to me, because on one hand, we're asking people to work a lot, and we're turning all of this care into jobs, right? And facilities and things like that. And so people then have to work a lot to just pay the bills and pay for everything. But then they also all of a sudden need to take care of their parents again, and of other family
Yes.
members who are in sensitive situations. So it's becoming a bit of a problem here and there. But I also wonder what it does to us as a culture that we don't take care of each other anymore, that we just find
No,
a home, or yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but this is not true just of Western culture. I mean, we've had such heartbreaking stories in my when I talk about the Adivasi, the Aboriginal indigenous patients. I noticed that this young volunteer was leaning over this old lady, and she was animatedly talking to him, and she was laughing and smiling, and he was crying. He was crying, and she was laughing, and then I just held him and I just pulled him and said, "What's wrong with you? What's happening?" He couldn't stop sobbing, and there was another volunteer who I saw, even she was sobbing. She's saying that this old lady, her son and daughter-in-law wouldn't look after her, and she couldn't see, and they would just shove a plate of food in front of her at lunch and meal times, and the
Wow.
dog and the cat all would put their faces in the food, and she had to ward them away to eat her food. And she's
Oh,
saying, now I can see, she's saying, I will shoo the dog away when he comes.
yeah. Oh,
Because I can see now, you know.
oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Mm.
yeah, even in
Yes,
poor communities, there is apathy. So,
yes,
that children should be insensitive with their parents, or, they have relationship screw ups, is not just an aspect of Western
yes.
culture. It's there everywhere. Otherwise, why would they enact a law in Himachal Pradesh? It's not such a nice thing. I mean, the problem is so rampant that you have to enact a law that you can't abandon your parents.
Yes, that's
Look at the other side
interesting.
of it.
Yes,
Yes,
and I
yes.
think we don't have that law, but it has just been replaced with the government takes care of the parents, or some institution takes care of them, right? But um, I noticed that the family bonds are becoming less and less tight. We're
Yes, yes, everywhere,
yeah,
even where. Like I told you, I told Paul, I'm telling you also that we are also getting there. We are becoming
yes,
so-called
that's
modern. We are
interesting.
becoming. Yeah, we are becoming there, and
Why do you
now
think?
after some time, like my next generation, I'm not married, but I have friends whose children are 16 and 20 years old, and they relate to their parents in a totally different way. They will go to Europe and America because those who are rich and well off, their children go to they live a very totally Western life. They go to Western countries,
Yes.
and probably if their parents are sick or dying, they might. I don't know if they might come. Forget taking care of them. They might even visit them. So from the next
Yes.
generation, I am not expecting in India also not so much. It'll come on. Parity will come. Unfortunate that benchmark is not very enviable. That we should seek to have that parity. That old age home uh, will become the norm rather than a taboo, which is it. Mine is the last of the generation. Who's uh, who's little careful and socially. I mean, I would never have thought of. In fact, in a little selfish way, I even I may add that I was young and strong, and I'm finished with my duties. I don't have to because I look after. I
Yes.
see my other
Yes.
friends look
Well,
after their old parents.
yes.
And they are not there. They are not young themselves.
Yes.
They
You
are
took
in their
something
45,
positive
50.
out of it. Yes.
Yes. So, well, though of course it would be great to have my parents around. I really love my mom.
Yes.
She died very quickly without notice. Just 1 month's
Oh,
notice.
that's, yeah.
And my father, we didn't have such a great relationship. So I was a little afraid that if my father dies, who will look after my accounts? I mean,
Oh.
I'm sorry. But of course,
But he did that.
he did
Was
that.
a
He was looking
joke.
after me. He
Yeah.
was taking
No,
care of
yeah.
me.
Yes. Wow.
Because then I
Well,
learned banking
yes.
and accounts
Yes.
because
You're
I
taking
anything.
over a new responsibility.
They paid my mother's my within 3 weeks of my mother's death. I mean, I tell you now, uh, I had all sorts of psychological problems. I was a daily marijuana user,
Okay.
and I was on alcohol when my mom died. I was completely healed of it within one calendar year. Within 3 weeks of my mom's death. I don't want to say mom. It's very American. 3 weeks of my mom's death. She I was initiated into a Reiki class. I mean, this like she was watching. It just happened magically, and everything was. Then I've like been. I was off and alcohol, and of course I don't take that anymore. For years, for about 6 or 7 years, I was totally clean. And she had sort of initiated my entry into spirituality in
Oh,
1997.
wow. So you get the help you needed in that moment when you joined that
The-
class?
oh yes, so I tell you, I mean, I saw my mother has helped me while she was alive, and she has helped me far more after she died.
Oh,
So your ancestors do look after you. If you were to refer to that movie Lion King, who remembers the Lion King? Your parents are stars; they are watching over you.
oh, that was a beautiful part.
Yes.
Yes, beautiful.
Remember? Paul, do you remember that?
I may be the only person who hasn't seen that movie yet.
Oh, okay. I think I'm monopolizing the conversation. I'll let both you guys speak. Go ahead,
Paul will
Paul,
go on
say.
Netflix after this conversation.
I will.
It is a beautiful part. Um, do you notice the same kind of tendencies in the United States, Paul, where caring becomes a job and less about just doing it and because you love someone and
Well, again, if I start to go off on too much of a tangent, just please let me know. What I was sort of thinking, maybe I was getting a little grandiose, but trying to think of even more broad what the culture of the United States might be in terms of this kind of stuff. So, again, kind of speaking stereotypically, the I can't speak for the Native Americans, but for everybody who's come over in the past 400 years, we have this whole, we're very ambitious,
hmm,
got to do it. Freedom. We've got freedom of speech, freedom of economics, freedom of course, not the slaves. That's a whole nother. So we lie to ourselves here in the United States. But keeping to this myth that we tell ourselves, you can be anything you want. We are settlers. We strike out our own way. We have this concept in the United States of manifest destiny. We have an entire continent to tame, and we're going to do it, and we're strong. And so self-determination. And so there's a lot of this thought of personal growth and be your own
Yes.
person. And then we're a very capitalistic, free enterprise country. We have this myth. So it's every interaction, it could be argued, has become some sort of, I do this, so I'm expecting this in return.
Ah, yes.
And that little tallies are always kept. Okay, you did this. Well, you did that because you're a friend. That's nice. But now I'm going to do something for you. So within that, yes, okay, I have gone off on a tangent. But yes, more and more, every little thing is becoming monetized because here in the United States, we want to find a way to make money off of everything and make profit. So there's nothing wrong with folks getting more training and more learning, more education and learning best practices. That side of making everything a job. But the other side is that, well, I have my own dreams and my own goals, and I can't help you, but if you pay me, I'll help you. I could find a job and do that. And I do the same thing myself. It's like okay, I want to do certain things. How can I phrase it to myself, and most people I know, we don't phrase it, how can I make money off of this, but how can I do what I love, what I want to do, and support myself? How can I make money for food and rent and all these other consumer products that I want?
Yes.
So that's a different way of answering your question, maybe. But yeah, we definitely find a way to find a job out of everything in terms of old folks, and then also on the younger end of taking care of children. So of course we have teachers, but we have daycares, and we have all sorts of sporting and activities to keep our kids engaged. I'm going off a little bit on a tangent, so please reel me.
This is,
or Dev, if you want to jump in on any thoughts. So, okay, well, right. So maybe I could follow that up in saying we have this supposed frontier spirit. And again, I'm speaking in very general terms. This frontier spirit of charity begins at home. You got to help yourself. You got to do what's right for you. Don't let anybody stop you from your goals. But I think we are a very generous country. As individuals and as a group, we have a lot of problems, and sometimes our giving, or most of the times our giving, comes with strings attached, geopolitical and military and economic strings attached. But if you put someone in front of us who is really in an emergency situation, we like to think we will always help that person. And we have a Christian background. A lot of the people are Christians, and so through churches, folks give money and are there to help. We also have the strong spirit of, well, you got to really help yourself. You know, we're taking care of ourselves, and you need to take care of yourself as well. And so again, we have this sort of split personality. We, as individuals, we do get a lot from our government, but we also seem to be afraid of other people getting things that we're not going to get. So we have this mistrust of people who we believe are depending on the government for healthcare or housing or food or stuff. And if we give those people money through our churches, well, that's okay. But if the government takes our money and redistributes it, ooh, we don't like that.
well,
or some of us.
That also seems like when I think of the United States, and like one word that is often used, I think, in relation to it is freedom. And when you give to a church, then it's free giving in a way.
Right, yes.
Do you think that ties into that?
I think a lot of United States folks think that yes, if they would like to have the choice to give and give in the ways that they want to. They don't. A large section doesn't want the government taxing and choosing and giving money to people, or just not having a say-so of where the money goes.
Yes.
And there's a mistrust that the government, there's a mistrust, one, that the government is inefficient and bloated and doesn't have the best ways to redistribute the money. And then there's just the whole thought of redistributing is wrong. We like to believe that everybody has economic opportunity. So if you're poor, that's because you don't work hard enough. So if I'm working hard and I've made money, why should I be giving you money because you haven't been working hard?
Yes.
So there is thought.
Yeah.
There's another whole section of Americans who believe that, no, that's the right way to go. Government is of the only organization that's of the size enough to really determine bigger projects and help on a wider scale for help. Because no one church in one community is going to solve, let's say, an epidemic, or is going to solve poverty throughout the United States. So we do need these collectives of who are looking at bigger problems that only billions and trillions of dollars can really address.
But I think that's an interesting.
Please come back on any thoughts, though.
It gets to an interesting question, which I think I wanted to ask both of you, because what I hear is also that different people think that helping is a different thing. So on one hand, I hear you say there are people who say, well, helping also means giving you your own responsibility, doing it for yourself, not having me jump in. Whereas others might think, no, we want to provide everything and we want it written into the laws. And so everybody is taken care of regardless of their situation. But they could be considered both as ideas or philosophies on helping. What do you think helping is?
Dev, would you like to jump in? I feel like I've...
yeah, because I have some very, I have some newfound views on helping, when you say helping, because initially that is supposed to be the main topic of our discussion.
Yes.
But now I guess we're beginning it. But quoting one, okay, forget, I won't quote this person, but it's very difficult it is very essential, I might rephrase, to identify individuals or groups who can receive help. Trust me, people do not want to be helped.
No.
People are not ready to receive what you want to give them. They will only want what they want. You see tramps on the road. You cannot rehabilitate a tramp. He will only ask for money, and he will only receive what he thinks you ought to be giving him, not what you ought to be giving. So that is a very, very, because I've been into social work for 18 years now, and it is very, and to quote, I mean, if this is going to be public, let me accredit. There's one of my teachers who's from Access Consciousness. He's an American. His name is Gary Douglas. Gary Douglas's earth-shattering line, which I get goosebumps even as I'm repeating it. He's saying, if you give anything to anyone who is unwilling or unable to receive it, it comes back with daggers attached.
Wow.
If you give, quoting Gary Douglas, because if this goes this thing, I want to credit Gary Douglas with this. If you give anything to anybody who is unwilling or unable, inability or unwillingness are two words, to receive what you have to give him, it comes back with daggers attached. Very meaning you feel so screwed up, okay, oh shit, why did I even offer this? Daggers. You get daggers.
Yes.
So please elaborate on this, because you people have been very giving type,
I think it's...
I have tweaked my giving. So I want to give quality. I will give. So I must look for people who want to receive what gifts I have to give them.
Yes.
Even in terms of business, Sometimes even if I'm...
Yes. Also,
Everything, just
yeah,
have, not just social work, even in business, people are not willing to receive you.
yes,
People want people to fuck them over. Sorry to say, people don't want honest people who will stay straight on their face. In India especially, it is. I mean, I have been an estate agent for the longest time, and I sometimes I don't sweet talk the client. I just tell him as it is. A spade, and they want some sleazy estate agent. You know how estate agents are all over the world. So they want somebody who will smooth talk them, and probably then they find out that they have gotten into trouble because they listen to that fellow. So people are not even willing to
yes,
receive decency and honesty. People, Yuline, you must have found that in your life also.
yes,
How many
yes.
people are receiving
That,
you? Yeah.
I think for me, this past year, working with homeless people, um, I saw how complex this issue really is. um, I think, I mean, even though that I talk about some problems that we have here in the Netherlands, or some challenges that we're navigating, or of how are we going to take care of everyone with the resources that we have, simultaneously, it's still pretty well arranged from my perspective. And so I see people who have chances, who live in the street but have chances to enter into a program to finally be able to live in a house again. And they can get benefits, the same type of benefits that I get or could get. I'm not on them, but I could get them if something happens to me. And they can get those also, but they need to live in a house and not spend it all on drugs and alcohol. And, they can enter into rehab programs. And so there are a lot of options out there, but what I realize is that the person really needs to be ready, and that um,
Willing,
willing,
willingness.
willing, exactly. I think um, they need to be willing and they need to be capable. And with the capable part, you can be of help, right? So if someone is
Yes.
lacking finances to do something, but they are willing, you can give them the finances, especially the state and such, and charities can give them the finances they need to get where they want to go. And you can be of help there, but only in the capable area. If they genuinely do not want to go there, if they are not ready yet, or maybe they will never be ready, then what you give is not what they need, and or at least not to them, and it is not, they're not going to be grateful for it, I think.
Exactly,
Yes,
my point. So you have put it into action. This part, if you remember, you know, basically we as givers are also quite self-centered. I mean, to be very
yes,
blunt, because we think what is best for your
agree.
line, what I want to give
Yes,
to you. But your line doesn't give. She doesn't want that. She doesn't need it.
exactly.
She's not ready to receive it.
Yes,
So, and another tough thing is you can spend a lifetime, you know, what chance do you have of changing anybody else? Being on the spiritual path, I can barely, there are certain wretched patterns of mine internally. I hope my accent is clear. Are you understanding what I'm speaking,
yes, yes,
Paul?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So, what is the hope that I can change you or her when I can barely hope to change my own self?
yes,
You know. So the thing is to be in total acceptance of other people's choices. Can you be in acceptance of some person who say, okay, I will continue to drink alcohol, and then
yes,
from that vantage point, you can help him.
yes,
Because what you
exactly.
perceive as help is he
Yes,
doesn't give he doesn't give he thinks it's a nuisance. Your help is nuisance for me. I mean, if I'm an alcoholic, you're a nuisance. I don't want you because I want to go down the rabbit hole.
yes,
And my consciousness is of that level where I'm caught in that bubble. I don't want to come out of it. I don't want to break free from the the from the comfort of my pain, whatever it's
yes,
familiar.
yeah,
People do not want to, the subconscious, the human condition adheres to the familiar. Please understand, I'm not spouting. This is something which I
No,
have lived and
definitely.
experienced.
Yes.
You know, seriously, there are certain times when we want to change from one mental emotional state to another. You realize there are so many barriers to
Yes.
transcending that and breaking that. You know, please more on this, Yulain and Paul. Over to you.
I would love to hear how people deal with that who are dying. Actually, Paul, if you have insights on that.
Well, you know, fascinating conversation and wonderful stuff. And I'm picking up on that from, I'm looking back in my life when I was different and very selfish, but not a bad person. And I'm still very self-centered. But I'm looking at people I know or am aware of who have uh, alcohol problems or substance abuse problems, and the kind of help that's appropriate and isn't appropriate. And then, looking at people either in my community or in my country, the thought of the poor or the those in poverty. And a lot of what happens, is the rest of us give and give and give and push things to these people, to our fellow humans, but it's not necessarily what they want, and it's not necessarily what they need.
Wow.
There are lots of good anecdotes. I think there are, one I was looking at was after it's in my country recently, it's tough to keep some of the natural disasters apart from the mass shootings and gun violence that we have here.
Yeah.
We give and we hear, we give and we give, and we gave all these millions of stuffed animals and stuff. And there become these communities that get so many things that they're overwhelmed with these material objects they get, and it's not really what they want. So they end up spending money having to sort through all these very well-intended things that were donated to them, but it's not what they needed. So they're actually spending their own resources trying to sort through things that they don't need, that people have sent to them. Then looking, okay, back to my personal growth. I kept to myself. I never gave advice. I didn't like to accept advice. I had a bit of a drinking problem years ago, or problems of myself, and sometimes I wanted to listen, sometimes I didn't. Leave me alone, right? Now that I feel like I have a little bit more, let's say, emotional energy, spiritual energy to sort of look around and say, hi, what can I do to maybe help you? And, sometimes people are like, you can't help me. And they don't say it in a mean way.
Yeah.
But it's like, you can't help me overcome this substance abuse problem. You can't help me overcome X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, and maybe it takes a little bit looking at myself in the role as a helper, and I think I receive a lot more help than I give, but looking at myself in the role of a helper, you have to be willing to readjust and realize, okay, not everybody, just because I want to help doesn't make it a good match all the time. And I can't, sometimes helping can become like telling somebody what to do.
Yes.
And you don't do
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you get the daggers, when that person refuses and you get the daggers, you feel miserable. Oh shit!
Yeah.
Look at this. I'm trying to help him.
Yeah.
Boss, he doesn't need your help. He doesn't want it. You're
And
wasting
on
your
the other
time.
hand, the person is like, just leave me alone. You don't know what I need. You don't know what I want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
No, but
they're not being
coming back
mean,
to-
and we're not being mean either. But maybe it's just being there, being present, and saying,
Yes.
okay, this is how I can help you. And if I can help you by leaving, going away, let me do that.
Exactly.
If I can
Sure.
help you by listening, please let me listen. And then maybe sometimes what I find is hard for me is I get very anxious about the future. So I almost feel like if I can help you now, good, but don't expect me to help you later because I might have my own problem. But maybe that's what we need. It's like, okay, I know you're not ready for, well, I wasn't ready for the kind of help that you needed me to give. And maybe you're not ready to receive help. But maybe sometime in the later on, let's keep the lines of communication open,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
we can help each other.
Yes.
Also, too, lots of people don't want to feel like they're just getting charity. They want to help you too. That's why is it sometimes you see some of the most poverty-stricken people are the most generous? You give them
Wow.
something, they want to give you some back, or I can only take,
Yes.
please share, right? I hate to speak in generalities too, but some of the most ungenerous people are the people that have the most, right? They want to hang on to what they have and
Mm.
don't give any to other people. But those who have so little are willing to share.
So beautiful. Yes. Yes. I love that we're on 3 different continents, right? We're in completely
Yeah,
different parts of the world, and we're getting the same lesson here out of trying to be of help to others. That it's so important to help from based upon the other's perspective and not on what
Yes.
you want to do and what you want to give. That wow, that's
No, I mean,
amazing.
and a good person. I would like to just add an input that sometimes when you feel frustrated, you should ask the universe, request the universe, beseech the universe. Universe, please, what would it take for you to that I would find those people who need me, what I have to give to them,
Ah,
and that they
yes,
would find me. Let them find me, so that
yes.
there is no mismatch. Paul, you understand? So it is
yeah.
a good
No, wow,
question
that's
to
Absolutely.
ask yourself 10 times a day. 10 times a day. Okay, what? So if I'm in a state agency for that matter, I would been for the longest time, because I'm not very successful nowadays because I'm not focused. I'm too much of my time is in this work, which is somewhat of a passion for me. So, uh, what would it like? I would ask, universe, please take me to the people who want to receive me. Who want to receive what I want to give them. There should not be a mismatch here.
Yes, that's
And
beautiful.
unfortunately, unfortunately, the government school teachers who are having government grade salaries, and they are like an elite. So they are generally disregarding our inputs, while the children are such beautiful receivers because they are from
Oh,
underprivileged communities. So we are facing a paradox. Uh, uh, but recently, you'll be happy to know that we did this English proficiency program with these government school teachers, and they actually received us totally.
oh,
And
beautiful,
we've broken those barriers, yes. And of course,
beautiful.
children are the best, the safest model for anything that you may want to give them, because they are the best receivers. They
Ah,
don't
the
have
best
judgment.
givers and
The best
receivers.
givers ever. Best
Yes,
receivers and
just so
receivers. Children.
freely and naturally and like sincere.
Sincere.
Yes. Wow. Yes. So, what moves you to be of help? What's your motivation? Where does it come from?
See, the thing is, it's a, I mean, it's a question which is very, it's a very direct question, very straightforward
Mm-hmm.
question. But motivation to help, as in, personally, I feel the motivation, the need to want to help someone by implication is a very egoic thing. I
Mm-hmm.
would feel. At a very higher level, according to there's a sage in India called Ramana Maharshi. He says you don't doing is not the ultimate, being is the ultimate, being. So if you were being and were so present in your life at every step, what would be necessary and needed at that point in time, at that moment in time, would automatically spontaneous action would take place.
Ah,
Does it make any sense to you?
yes.
Really?
Well,
Not totally, but I like it, and The great thing is, I'll get to listen to it again on the recording, and until I
Sure.
understand.
Yes. Because
yes. I
yeah,
think
I would
that's
like you
very
to
beautiful. The,
both you, Yoline, look up. It's a Wikipedia link. Ramana Maharshi. A lot of Western uh, seekers have gone to this sage, and he had a mystical experience at the age of 16, where he was totally he was out of body consciousness. and that transformed his life. And he lived for years like a zombie. He didn't feel the need to eat. Also, he had to be force fed. And he was discovered by a British traveler called Paul Brunton. I would
Okay.
recommend this book for both of us. His name is the the name of the book is A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton.
Okay. So maybe
Okay.
you can send the link
And
to
Ramana
us.
Maharshi has 3 chapters dedicated to him,
Okay.
Ramana, and people from all over the world till today, because thanks to Paul Brunton, a lot of Western seekers go to the ashram in South India and they meditate on the self,
Okay.
and
But I think it's very interesting what you say, like going back to this state of being um, where our actions spontaneously arise. Isn't that also a little bit what children do, what we just talked about?
exactly,
Yes.
exactly, because they're not conditioned. We are we are just conditioned so much by
Yes.
our
Ah,
recorded the algorithms. We don't know how to
wow.
interrupt the algorithms. We are so programmed. That is why one of my favorite speakers, I would urge you to. He's also an American. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He
Oh, I
says that
know. Yes.
somebody asked him, the Dr. Dispenza, they asked him that why do affirmations not work? He's saying your body has become the mind by continuous programming because your body reacts to every thought, feeling, emotion that you have. Contraction or a feeling of fear or anger has its effects, ripples in the body. Would you agree? The body contracts and
Yes, for
goes into
sure.
fight mode,
Yes,
fight or flight
definitely.
mode. It
Yes.
is not your mind, but it is your body which is bearing the brunt of all this,
Yes.
of what you may call stress. The cortisol
Yes.
is released, the adrenaline is released. So he's saying when your body has so very well perfected this dysfunction of reaction to a single thought, what makes you think that you're going to shout? It's like a computer is running on autopilot, algorithms are running, and you're shouting to the computer, I am fine, or
Yeah.
I am health, I am abundant or wealthy. I
Yes.
mean, it's not going to help because your program is into motion. You are not interrupting those algorithms. And how do you do that? By meditation, by being
I'm sorry,
present,
the connection
by
just
inhabiting,
became very poor, so I didn't get that last part. You said, how do you do that?
inhabiting your body,
Ah,
being
yes,
present
being
in and with
present.
your body.
Yes, beautiful. I think,
Yes.
would you agree with that, Paul, that, uh, that we have somehow been programmed by society to stop that spontaneous action of helping each other, being of help to each other?
Well, I seem to have a good pattern of listening to your question and then answering the question I want to answer. Right? So
I
while
noticed that. Thanks.
Go
Thanks for
ahead!
pointing it out. I
while
just
you
noticed
guys
it.
were
I noticed
talking,
it.
but making it sound, being pleasant to you, making pretending I'm answering your question. No, what? Well, that is sincere, but I kind of like what I was thinking about as we've been talking the past 5 minutes. When you asked what calls me to help or what calls us
Mm-hmm.
to help, I was I don't have a background in this. I'm not speaking as an expert. Broadening out again, well, because of some of the research I'm doing, what in terms of Homo sapiens, human beings, what is hardwired in us in terms of helping? Well,
Yes.
okay, we are a body that needs food, likes shelter, feels it wants clothing, needs water. So there's always going to be that. Can you even call it selfishness? Just we need that to survive and
Self-care.
thrive.
Yes.
And then let's say through evolution, we were in bands and then villages, hunter gatherers, agrarian communities, and maybe we found through evolution that helping first our family helped us, and then helping our little band, what we call bands of, other words are tribes or whatever, helped us. So we discovered that by helping others, there was an evolutionary benefit to that. If we helped
Yes.
others, then when we didn't get food, they gave us some food. So
Yes.
it was selfish, but it was being nice to others sometimes helps us, and that's why we're doing it. So, expanding that, obviously, if we get into the world of cities and stuff, well, we don't know everybody. If we live in a city, there's going to come a certain point. What is it? 1,000 people, 10,000, 20 million people. We're not going to know everybody, so we don't know if they. Boy, I'm really going off on some sort of extreme, but we don't always know that they can help us. I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's hardwired for us to help in certain ways.
I think so
and
too.
Maybe to believe that we shouldn't help in other ways, meaning if we don't know the person we're helping, maybe we're less likely to give.
Yeah.
What call me to give? What I feel is like after my mother died, during this same time period of like 7 years, I think 6 or 7 family members died. So I went through a lot of grief and changes and depression and insularity, selfishness. I mean, I wouldn't accept help from. I didn't know how to process all this stuff, and somehow I don't. That, which is a different story, but somehow through all of that, I found some extra energy, emotional energy, physical energy, spiritual energy to look beyond myself, and maybe it was just say, "Hey, I've been through a lot. Others have been through a lot too. Maybe I." Help them out too, a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. So I've taken little steps to be available to people for help. And let me reiterate, I get so much more back from folks, me, a lot.
I think that's so interesting. Like sometimes it appears as if we're going to make a sacrifice, but then if we actually do it, then like a whole new world opens up to us, and we realize that actually living that way is much richer than we could have ever expected.
Right. Well, speaking in purely crass terms, if I may say, I've reached an age where, guess what? When I was a lot younger, I had more energy for sex, for drinking, for a little recreational drug use, for dancing late at night, for hangovers, for staying. I don't have all that energy to do that. I have other interests I mean, I'm sorry if it's a little crass to say that, but now I feel like it's just as fascinating and interesting to me to do this. I don't have an interest in going far and getting drunk and trying to do other things. So maybe that's, my interests have changed. So it's still very self-centered. This gives me a benefit, so that's why I'm interested in it.
Do you notice that too, Dave? That with age, if you become older, that your interests shift and you want to be
certainly. But I guess I had the social bent of mine even when I was younger. But then I was more diverted by all the things that Paul has mentioned, But yes. Everything and what he has just mentioned, and now suddenly I have no interest in all this. I may add that people my age also still indulge in all these kinds of things, because this is the only escape and release that they know. I don't need to do anything, don't need to drink. But once in a while, if I may feel like having some drinks, I do have my own few rounds of whiskey. I have it in my house because I find the energy of restaurants and clubs unbearable, as we have discussed earlier.
Yes,
they're unbearable. When there's parties and stuff, it's not the thing for me. But yes, I do enjoy my drink once in a way.
Of course.
Choosing a bit of anti-consciousness. Yeah.
Well, that's actually the last question that I wanted to ask both of you is, how do you find a balance between your own needs and self-care and other people's needs and caring for others?
Well, I have a background in in taking care of myself, in always putting myself first. I say that very straightforwardly.
Thanks for your honesty.
So
thanks for honesty.
I always take care of myself in that respect, meaning a lot of times I don't make commitments that maybe I could. A lot of times going back to I have the energy now, but maybe not in the future. I like my own personal time. I like to be I like to choose what I do with my own time. So, in terms of maybe how much more I could give and what I actually give, there's a great difference in that. Now, maybe more to what you're asking is like, yes, when I give or when I'm out among people and there's emotional things going on and I give my energy, yeah, I get tired. So I have a tendency. What I do is I spend time with myself because that's what I like to do. I don't have a problem with solitude. That re-energizes me. And I will also say that a not great way of taking care of myself in this way is I will sometimes eat a lot and I will eat stuff that's not healthy for me. So that's a way of coping because it brings me comfort at the time, but I wouldn't say it's particularly healthy. And if I was doing this when I'd been a drinker, I probably would be, going home at night and drinking a lot or a fair amount to make, to sort of chill myself out. So
How do you
that's my.
recharge now?
I meditate. I meditate a lot.
Meditation.
Fabulous. That is a great
So
thing. I do that too. Same. Ditto for me.
Yes.
See,
that
meditate has a direct effect
Yes.
on unconscious eating. I don't know about drinking. Yes, it doesn't. It mitigates the need for drinking to a great
yeah,
extent, but it certainly has. It keeps you in control of what you eat. At least it keeps you in control of how much you eat, which is more important than what you eat. Actually,
right. Well, then
would you agree,
that's
Yulin? Would you agree, Yulin?
I do the same as Paul.
No, 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 no.
I definitely
Uh,
overeat sometimes if and it's directly related to how overwhelmed I am. So that's extra need for
still there.
self-care.
yeah.
Oh no,
You, Paul, are you okay?
dropped out.
We can still hear and see you. I don't know. But I noticed the same thing actually, Dave. So that's kind of interesting.
Hi, I'm finishing up my Skype call, but I lost the connection. Sorry.
No, we can hear you.
Oh, now he's gone, I think. How is that for you? What do you do to keep a balance, Dave?
Uh, I, I told you once in a year for a whole month I go to the mountains.
Yes.
I'm in the temperate zone, so totally I unwind myself and I spend a lot of time in amidst nature, even in Ganeshpuri where my social objective is. There are forest paths and trails where I can just go for
So
walks,
beautiful.
and
Yes.
I like he said, Paul, meditation, solitude,
Yes.
these are great recharges, because for people who are like us empaths,
Mm-hmm.
like I tell people, my friends, that for me after a hard day's work, social interaction is not to get over that, the
Yes.
hard day's work. It adds to that. So
Yes.
it is not both. It is not this for that. It is either or. It is not
Yes.
both.
Yes. So like being
Trust me,
very,
trust me.
yes.
Yeah, trust me. The day I have to attend a major function or party, I'm at home with myself the whole day. I don't do much work, or I don't interact with people because I have to compensate by interacting in the night in that
Yes.
particular function. I don't know if
Yeah.
how that is with you.
I relate, absolutely. But I think
Yeah,
then also, like what you're saying, and I thought we have had this conversation
that's
um,
sweet.
ourselves on Facebook once on how you find balance between working and taking care of yourself. I think that's so
Yes,
important to get
yes,
to know
yes.
yourself and know where your boundaries are. And I'm still learning, I notice. I'm still
Oh, of course, you're
learning.
doing so well for yourself,
Ah,
Udain.
thank you.
You,
Thank you.
you should just learn to tell people off.
I should
Have you
learn.
learned that?
That's how we will end the video.
Sorry?
That's how we will end the video. You should learn to
Yeah.
tell people off when when you help others. You need to learn when to.
No, no, no. Sometimes you need to tell people
Yes,
to back
a
off or
boundary.
just.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Paul is not coming back.
Yes, yes.
I think this was
Okay.
probably a beautiful point to end
Yes,
the video. Um,
yes.
Paul, I will thank you in person in a bit. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your point of view. And Dave, thank you as well. Like, thank you for your presence and your insights. And I'm so grateful that you both wanted to have this conversation with me. And
Thank you so much, Jolene. You have really, it's been a pleasure and a joy to connect with
oh,
you,
thank you so
and
much.
thank you for initiating this lovely thing.
Thank you.
I guess we know each other now as friends. I mean, apparently we have
Yes.
never spoken like this before.
So
Huh?
for
Thank you.
every
God bless.
thank you for everyone
Namaste. Yes.
watching. Um,
Yes.
Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos of sympathetic listening, and thank you so much
Sure.
for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed it, enjoyed this little meetup.
Ah, yes. I hope everyone enjoys it too. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.